collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Well, let me start by wishing you a very happy new year. I hope you've enjoyed the Christmas holidays. And we're back with you this week with a very serious topic. In the wake of all the headlines following the Ayia Napa rape case, we ask, are our police and judicial systems fit for purpose?
You have two linked cases that you didn't investigate properly if you wanted to reach the truth.
The big news over the last few weeks has been the trial in the Famagusta court of a British teenager who has been charged with public mischief and was very recently found guilty of the same. If you've followed the local news, you'll know what this is all about. But let's go back to the beginning, which was last July, when this girl was raped in an Ayia Napa hotel. Gang raped, she says, and then she retracted her statement. So to bring you up to date, not just on what's been happening in the court, and indeed the feelings about this in both Cyprus and Israel, because her attackers were Israeli boys, we're joined by her defence lawyer, Nicoleta Haralambidou. Nicoleta, we need to set the scene first, and we do go back to July, and we know the goings-on in Ayia Napa, but a holiday fling is not the same as a gang rape. And I think a lot of people were surprised that in the court case, correct me if I'm wrong, the judge decided that he wouldn't even look at the evidence as to whether she was or was not raped by one or more people. So how does that all fit in?
Well, that's one of the main problems, because the position during trial was that the court didn't want to link the two cases, the rape complaint and the public mischief case, even though in our view, and this was the position of the defense from the beginning, that she was either a victim of rape or she lied. There is not any third option. Therefore, the two cases were directly linked. However, we had problems with this position of the court because it was clear for the judge that he wouldn't enter into any discussion whether rape took place or not.
Listen, I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but it seems to me that if you're going to accuse somebody of lying about something, you have to surely establish the truth about what they're accused of lying about.
Yes, and this is a major problem on how the whole case was handled from the beginning, because since after the retraction of her statement about rape, she pleaded not guilty, and therefore
to public mischief,
and she insisted on her complaint that she was raped. You could not say that we don't examine anything about rape and we only go with the case on public mischief. And the problem was that the investigation of the rape claim and the rape complaint was over. Because the Israelis went back home, there was nobody there who knew what happened that night to examine or cross-examine, apart from the girl, that she was not believed because of the retraction statement. So, in a way, you have two linked cases that you didn't investigate properly if you wanted to reach the truth.
And let's go back to what you can tell me about the way the police investigated the initial claim of rape. Because she was examined, I think, by medical practitioners.
Yes, indeed.
And the retraction came sometime later.
The retraction came 10 days after she reported that she was raped.
Right, but let's just go back again to the fact that during those 10 days, all her alleged attackers were flown out of Cyprus. Were they not questioned?
No, during those 10 days, the alleged perpetrators were actually in detention on the basis of a warrant. They detained some that the police considered that they were involved in the rape. I have to say here that the people actually arrested were not people identified by the girl. They were identified, apart from one that she mentioned clearly his name, because he was the one that she started
was having a romance with.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. The rest of the people, they were identified by the police. There was not any identification parade to identify herself. And they were arrested on the basis of police information in the context of their investigations.
So let's come to the video.
Yeah.
Because I think what shocked a lot of people is that this turns out to be a sort of revenge porn case, because some of those present in the room, whether or not they did actually sexually assault her themselves, filmed what was going on, and even worse, then posted that online. Now, my understanding is that the police have seen that video, so they must know whose phone it was on, and therefore who took that video, which would suggest that that person was obviously in the room, and whether they attacked or not, they were definitely doing something that I think in European terms is illegal.
Well, let me clarify something about the video, because a lot of things have been said about the videos. The videos that were circulated immediately after the Israelis were freed and they went back to Israel, the so-called revenge porn, that they may have issues according to Israeli legislation, because in Cyprus it's not a criminal offense. It's not the video of the night of the rape. It's a video of a different night, of a previous night. So it has nothing to do with the night of the rape. Other videos that have been recently been circulating around, from what I hear and from what I understand, and which some I have seen just to check whether they relate to the case, they are not even videos of this girl. So, on the night of the rape, there is no video showing consensual sex of this girl with more than one person. On the contrary, there is a video that suggests that supports what she's saying, because the only video that exists of the night of the rape is one according to which the girl is having consensual sex with her flirt, and some people are trying to enter the room and they are videoing, and she tells them to leave. What happened after that, nobody knows. That's why it's a big misunderstanding, intentional or non-intentional, that there is a video circulating around saying that this is the video of the night of the rape. This is not the case.
But you just said that it was taken on the night of the rape. It shows people trying to get in as she's having sex with her holiday romance.
Yes, and it stops there. What happened after what this video shows, nobody knows. Because the previous videos that they have circulated of the previous night, they again show having consensual sex with one, again her flirt, but there are other people moving around. There are other people in the room, which again is consistent with what she stated in her statements, because she did say that yes, during times that I had consensual sex with this my flirt, whatever, there were people coming and going in the room. There is no inconsistency there. What is troubling is that many people they want to link that video with the night of the rape, which is not correct.
Right. What about DNA samples? My understanding again is that she was examined. DNA samples, different DNA samples, were found.
Of at least 4 persons, yes.
Well, did they take DNA samples from these alleged filmers or alleged attackers?
I don't know what type. The other problem, because the rape case was not directly linked with the public mischief case. Another problem we had is that we didn't have full disclosure of the investigation of the rape claim. We had some disclosure, even though we requested full disclosure from the beginning. So We have the report on the DNA tests that say that the DNA of at least 4 people was found in that room in various objects or whatever. I don't want to describe now. But that's about it. Whether other investigations were made too much, the DNA results with those that they were videoing, or you see what I mean? We don't know. Is
it usual for the police to not investigate fully like that and not disclose to the defence team what they have? I thought that was standard court procedure.
It's a standard norm. Yes, there is a different interpretation, if you want, as to full disclosure. First of all, we requested full disclosure of the material relating to the rape case. And one could easily say we are not trying a rape case, we are trying the public mischief case. However, the prosecution gave us some of the evidence in relating to the investigation to the rape claim. But the prosecution considered that we give you the evidence that we rely on to prosecute. So there is not any other evidence that we rely on, so we don't give full disclosure. Of course, this is a point that we're going to raise also on appeal. According to the European Court of Human Rights and its case law, we should have full disclosure of all the evidence that they support the defense or may not support the defense, but we need full disclosure in order to have equality of arms in the procedure.
This brings us, of course, onto the whole question of how women are treated in Cyprus. And this follows on, doesn't it, from the murders of the foreign women. Mm-hmm. And again, it's another foreign woman at the centre of something. You've dealt with asylum seekers, refugees, and women as well as men.
Yeah.
How, if at all, do you see things progressing here in Cyprus? Because the simple fact that I understand both men and women from Israel flew over here to be outside the court as she was sentenced, saying, "We believe you," that's a very strong indication that a gender problem exists in the judicial system in Cyprus.
I would say a gender problem exists in all institutions in Cyprus. Unfortunately, we have never addressed the issue of gender violence or gender equality or the various aspects that gender plays an important and specific role in the situation, particularly of women, in the right way. We have legislation in a piecemeal approach. Some legislation covers women's rights and equality in employment, etc. We have ratified the Istanbul Convention, but we have not implemented it. The definition of rape as such is different in the Istanbul Convention than in the criminal code. So when the police is saying we're investigating rape, they investigate rape as this is defined where? In the Istanbul Convention or the criminal code?
What's the difference in the definitions?
The definition in Istanbul Convention is simply that rape means any sexual act with no consent. So the consent is the basic element. The no consent, the non-consensual sex is the main element of the rape definition, which is not exactly the same as in our criminal code. So
how does our criminal code define it?
It differentiates, first of all, whether a woman is married or not.
What?
Yes. Shall I read it for you?
No, I don't think we've time to go into that sort of depth. But all right, so that means basically, you see, the other thing is, I again think I'm right in saying that, for example, in the UK, and I presume this is Istanbul Convention, if you're paralytically drunk, you cannot give consent, and that's classed as rape.
For example. And another dimension is the situation this girl has found herself to be in, because she came through a company promising that they're having fun, they're going to spend a 2 months period working and having fun and drinking, etc., etc. in accommodation that is decent, but she came and found herself in a very difficult situation because the relevant premises were not decent in terms of safety, in terms of many aspects. She didn't have a job immediately when she came to Cyprus. She was only given a wristband to have access to free drinks the whole day. So they place young people in a very vulnerable situation, especially young girls at this age. That is important. It's not so easy to say she was an adult. She was 18 years old. You know, the transition from being a minor to adulthood is not an easy.
And it's not just a birthday.
Exactly. There is a transitional period. Yeah, it's not just a birthday. I mean, the Commission of the Rights of the Child recognizes that the transition from being a minor to adulthood needs special attention because it's not easy for every person to deal with adulthood in a responsible manner. We cannot expect of young people at the age of 18, 19, 20 that now they are adults and okay, they know what they're doing. It's not like that.
Let's look as well, if we may, at the political aspects of all of this. And I'm talking about our foreign policy, our treaties with Israel, the fact that our president and the Prime Minister of Israel appear to be bosom buddies, and there was, of course, the signing of the gas agreement just a few days ago. Do you think that there was any foreign interference in getting those boys back to Israel with the alacrity with which that was achieved? Because that, I think, is something a lot of people are saying, well, surely they should have been kept here until there was a full investigation of everything and then let them go. But she's been kept on what seems to me a much more minor charge, in jail for some considerable time, and then her passport confiscated and obliged to stay in Cyprus. And she's only just flown back with the court handing her down that suspended sentence. But she's now got a criminal record.
Yes, that's one of the main reasons that we are fighting for her acquittal, because she didn't commit this crime. She insists that she was raped. And therefore, that's why we are appealing, because she does have a criminal record, and this will influence, obviously, her life.
We didn't actually go in great detail to the procedures followed in the police station, which brought about her retraction of her original allegation. And I want to do that because on every cop show you see on TV, the first thing in the interview room that happens is they switch on a tape recorder.
Yeah.
And the proceedings, as far as I'm aware, were just this girl, the police at the Ayia Napa police station, however many of them there were, and it's her word against theirs. There's no record on tape or film or anything else of what actually took place.
Correct. This is what happened because the police generally does not record the interrogation of a crime and the statements given during the interrogation.
One has to ask why not, Nicoletta. I'm not aware of many other countries, certainly in Europe, that operate in this fashion. I thought it was again part of sort of European practice.
There is no common European practice. Unfortunately, there are no common standards for all EU member states to have an obligation to record the interrogation by the police of suspects for a crime. The only obligation that exists coming from EU law is that there is an obligation to record and video record when it's a minor, which we still didn't transpose in our national legal order. But as for adults, this is not regulated at EU level.
One would assume that even the police would realise that it's a form of protection for them,
yes,
as long as they're operating in the manner in which they should be operating.
Exactly. I mean, having a proper procedure that is recorded, that is transparent, that can be put in front of the court and nobody questions whether things were done right or wrong, is protecting both the suspects and the police. Because you cannot have anybody questioning whether, in the States they find other techniques, even with the recording to manipulate sometimes statements of suspects, but at least you have the basic transparency that should govern this type of procedures, which are very important for people who are suspected of committing a crime. In this case, exactly, there was not the time which she stopped being a victim and she became a suspect is not clear. It's not clear because we have an 18-year-old girl who enters the police station as a victim to give a third statement and a third account of the facts of what happened the night of the rape, and she comes out after 8 hours as a suspect of public mischief and accused eventually of a public
And nobody
mischief.
really knows what happened in those 8 hours. Let's come to the signed statement, because another thing that looks a bit odd, and we've all seen, I'm sure, in the newspapers and on social media, actually the statement is being photographed.
Yes.
And we see, because I think there was a forensic
Yes.
linguist brought in to analyse it, we're talking about a girl here who's won a place at a university in the UK. So she's obviously pretty well educated.
Well educated, yes.
And you only have to read that statement if you're a native English speaker like I am and think, it's a very strange use of those words. And that's exactly what the linguist said.
Yes. That's why we thought it's necessary to bring a linguist, because the position of the girl from the beginning was that this part of the retraction statement was dictated to me. It's not my words. They were told to me what the police officer told me what to write. Therefore, we brought a linguist to see whether this, who is an expert in the UK, and he explained very well and in a very detailed manner why this retraction statement could not be written with a free will as suggested by the police of this girl.
And what was her suggestion? I mean, she was threatened, is my understanding. What did they say to her if she didn't sign the statement?
She was threatened that she's going to end up in jail. Her mother will see her in handcuffs. Her friends will be arrested with international arrest warrants because they lied as well about her being raped, because she had two friends that they supported.
She was in text messages with them, wasn't she, while she was at the police station?
But also the friends that first saw her when coming out of the room that night, they gave statements as well as to her situation and condition, etc. And that, she should sign this statement because this will be over and she will be able to return back home, and, she was promised that everything will be over and she will be able to go back home. So you have an 18-year-old girl in this situation after so many hours of questioning in a police station, and without being clear at any given moment whether she was a victim or a suspect or...
And without a lawyer?
Without a lawyer, yes.
Is it not standard procedure when police are going to conduct an interrogation to, if you like, read people their rights? Do we have in Cyprus a requirement that if I'm arrested, the first thing the policeman should say to me is, would you like a lawyer? Mm-hmm.
Well, there is also a letter of rights that it should be given to every person who suspected of committing a criminal offence under the law. The full rights they have in terms of access to a lawyer, interpretation, translation, access to call someone from their family, their embassy if they are foreigners. There is a full set of rights provided under also EU directives, including the right to have access to a lawyer, because if you don't know your rights, you cannot exercise your rights.
And you wouldn't expect an 18-year-old who didn't expect to find herself in a police station to know that she had the right to say, I need a lawyer.
She asked them, actually. She says that she asked them that I want a lawyer, can I have a lawyer? And they told her perhaps in the UK you could have a lawyer, but not in Cyprus. You are not entitled to a lawyer. Then they say that in the trial it was submitted that they told her about the right to a lawyer, but she said, I don't want a lawyer because my mother is a lawyer, but her mother is not a lawyer. So it's the fact remains that there was no lawyer there for whatever reason. And again, recording what happened there would be able to prove whether she was told of her rights.
And it wouldn't have taken 5 months or whatever it did for the court
Yes.
to reach a decision and then hand down a sentence.
Yes.
So what happens next? She's gone back to the UK.
Yes.
I know, and you know, that judicial procedures in Cyprus take a
long
very,
time.
very, very long time. If
Yeah.
you're appealing this, how soon, realistically, do you think you can get it heard? And I presume the first appeal is to the Supreme Court here in Cyprus.
Yes, the Supreme Court here in Cyprus, we have 10 days, so we have to submit the appeal by the 17th of January. We will seek an expedited procedure. We have the right to set out certain reasons that we believe that it should be expedited. Whether the Supreme Court will grant this or not, we don't know. But generally, yes, if the Supreme Court, the court does not decide to provide an expedited procedure, which means that it could be heard in some months, I mean, possibly also 6 months maximum, it would mean that it would drag on. I mean, it may take a year and a half or more for criminal appeals to be heard.
Which is another form of punishment, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess, yes, because it's important for her to have an end in the situation that she's in today. You know, she has to move on with her life. She's suffering from PTSD, so dragging on a situation that continues to place her in a vulnerable situation is not good for her health and her mental health. So I believe that the sooner this is all over, it's the better for her.
And the better for Cyprus, because
And
we've come out
also
of
for
this
Cyprus,
very
yeah.
badly indeed. Do you think that it will be the catalyst for our House of Representatives to look very carefully at the criminal code and introduce those things which are not in there at the moment, so that there can be no repetition of people being treated in this way and not only ruining their lives, but also, let's face it, giving Cyprus a dreadful name, and we rely on the goodwill of foreigners for a lot of our economic welfare.
Well, I hope that this case will be an example and will open the case to consider changes in the whole system. I mean, especially the way interrogation is taking place and whether it's recorded or not recorded, to examine the criminal procedure rules again. But, I mean, from the initial statements, we've seen that, we don't doubt anything. Our judicial system is fine and we don't question anything. It looks like it's inconsistent also, I mean, from the government, it's inconsistent also with previous acknowledgement that our judicial system needs a reform. I mean, we had the Greco committee suggesting changes. There has been a whole debate around our judicial system and how does this work. And when I say judicial system, I don't necessarily mean only the courts. I mean the whole procedure, which starts from the police, the interrogation, the attorney general deciding whether to prosecute, and the courts. It is not clear how seriously all these issues are taken. I believe we need a full reform to modernize and our laws and our procedures, so that the human rights and suspects' rights and victims' rights are properly respected. And
we do need to remove this sort of patriarchal attitude when it comes to women in the dock.
Yes, this is a more general problem on how women are treated. We've seen it, as you said before, in the cases of the migrant women. We continue to see it on domestic violence cases. Remember the latest report from the ombudswoman about the fate of the young kid Stylianos who committed suicide. In that report, you can see also the treatment of the mother who was a victim of violence, and she was never taken seriously. So even though we see through various reports the results of this systemic problem of how women are treated when they report violence of any type of violence, and why do we expect to have this type of cases in order to act? I mean, for so many years, what have we been doing as a state?
Not a lot, unfortunately.
Not a lot.
And there we have to leave it.
Yeah.
That was Nicoleta Haralambidou, one of the defence lawyers for the young woman who has now flown back to England but is going to appeal on that alleged rape case in Ayia Napa last July. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.